Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counsellor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counselling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. In this episode, I'm talking today about NVS. NVS stands for Narcissistic Victim Syndrome. Now, many of you may not have heard of this syndrome simply because it's actually an informal diagnosis. It's not widely used in the mental health profession unless that mental health professional is specifically working with narcissistic abuse victims, NVS being widely recognized in the narcissistic abuse recovery community. Now, why was it so necessary to have a label for what a victim of narcissistic abuse experiences? Well, I think it was incredibly and is incredibly important because the nature of the abuse is completely different to any other sort of abuse. And the dynamics of this abuse result in very textbook symptoms and disorders and afflictions and ailments. And when you can see or you feel that you are getting sick and you are experiencing not one, not two, but numerous afflictions such as the ones I'm going to be talking about today, and you also recognize that you have been abused by a narcissist, remembering you are the expert in your trauma and that these behaviors are consistent patterns of behavior over space and time. When you come to trust your instincts and the research that you have done, then you can start to look at all of these characteristic symptoms and behaviors that you engage in and will come down with that relate directly to your abuse. So just bear in mind before I begin talking about the 15 symptoms of NVS today, just bear in mind that on their own, each one of these symptoms may be considered by another mental health professional or you, even yourself as the victim. You may consider them to be, just something very generalized that, could be the result of any one of many contributing factors that are impacting on your life. But when you start to group these behaviors, these symptoms together, that's when you can get a clearer picture of the direct link between these, your experiences, your behaviors, these disorders which are having a negative impact on your life and your abuse. So the first symptom of NVS I'm going to speak about today is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance to danger. Basically, you are walking on eggshells all the time. You're in a state of fight or flight. You're looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next attack. Why are you like this? Because you have been under attack for so long. And being hypervigilant is your brain's way of preparing. You now know that the bombs could drop at any second. So your brain, with all the chemicals it puts out there, keeps you in a hypervigilant state where you can jump to attention, spring to attention to protect yourself when those bombs drop. Now, hypervigilance in a domestically violent relationship, a narcissistic abuse relationship, that hypervigilance is to keep you safe so that you are on alert at all times. You're like that soldier at war who's in the trenches and is on guard and lets the other soldiers sleep. Your body is in that constant state because you have been attacked, and you never know when the bomb is going to drop or when you may get some peace. But your experience is that you never have peace. So it's safer to remain hypervigilant. Number 2 symptom of NVS is never looking forward to anything. Losing all your interests in your passions. Now, once again, and this is going to sound strange, your brain wants to keep you safe in this relationship. Our brains are wired for safety, not happiness. Your brain's number one job is to keep you alive. So your brain keeps you safe in this regard by not allowing you to get your hopes up, to think that you're going to have some joy, some excitement when the narcissist actually fulfills their promise. You have been future faked once too often. You have had your dreams crushed at the last second after not being able to sleep with excitement because you thought something good was around the corner, and the pain of having your hopes and your dreams crushed, that disappointment that you felt after so much excitement. It is just not worth it to get your hopes up. If it happens, it's a bonus, but your brain keeps you safe. In other words, it keeps you away from that terrible pain of disappointment by stopping you from looking forward to anything in the first place. And certainly giving up your passions is it goes alongside of not getting your hopes up. It actually goes directly hand in hand with that, because your passions brought the narcissist rage out, and every time you engaged in something that was fun or enjoyable, you would be made to suffer, whether it was the silent treatment or telling you that you are so selfish for devoting that time to yourself when you could be devoting that time to the rest of the family. It was easier just to give them up than have to come home to that punishment every time. And as I've said in past episodes, it becomes a win-win for the narcissist and lose-lose for you as the victim. This is classic coercive control, because you are the one that says no to those things. You ring the gym or whatever it is and cancel the membership. You delete your social media. And if you say anything to the narcissist, they would simply gaslight you out of your reality with something like, well, you didn't have to do that. I didn't do it. You did that yourself. So you've got no one else to blame. And maybe they would say something like, well, maybe that's your conscience having an impact there where you know that you were being selfish. Either way, they'll direct it back to you taking responsibility for those actions. So you give away your passions and you don't look forward to anything. So basically, you're at the mercy of whether your abuser follows through with anything they promise, and that's usually no. And if they do anything for you, there's always strings attached to it. Number 3 symptom of NVS is isolation. Now, this kind of goes along with the last symptom that I spoke about in the loss of your passion and your capacity to never look forward to anything, or to be able to look forward to anything, in that it's just not worth it. You learn very quickly through the punishments. Once again, you're bringing about of your own isolation, and of course there's overt measures that the narcissist uses, but they also engage in coercive control. So it looks like you're in charge of it, and you can't blame them, and they would simply make you aware of that fact, even though they coerced you into remaining isolated from your support system, as sure enough as if they called all your loved ones themselves. So through coercive control, it is just easier, you find, to say no to your friends, to your loved ones. You tell them, no, don't come over, because the narcissist is either so rude to them, or they trying to smear you and triangulate you with your own loved ones if they come to see you. Either of those scenarios results in you feeling angry and or worthless. Or perhaps you say, no, we can't come out tonight, because you're terrified at the narcissist creating a scene, and you don't want them to really see the narcissist's true self, because you know you can't leave. You're trauma bonded, and you don't want them to see exactly who they are, or they have seen who the narcissist really is at previous experiences, and it was just mortifying for you, and you don't want to have to be put in the middle of a scene like that ever again. Or your narcissist or the abuser in your life once again triangulates you with your loved ones while you're out, or creates some kind of drama, an argument with you that no one else can see. So they think that you are the one with all the issues, and the narcissist is your savior, so to speak. This is what we call the dog whistle. But there's so many scenarios where you end up doing, in inverted commas, the dirty work by saying no and remaining isolated, which makes you increasingly more dependent on your abuser because you have no one else. Number 4 symptom is fear feeling worthless, feeling like you have absolutely no value in the world at all, because this is what your abuser conditioned you to believe. All they did was destroy slowly but surely anything that made them jealous, envious, anything that was a trait they said they loved in the beginning, which attracted them to you. Those are the very traits they will destroy. Everything that is good about you, they set about dismantling your personality so that you would feel worthless, never able to live without them, to always be dependent on them, your abuser, for your self-worth. And of course, that will always be zero. They will always be striving to make you feel worthless, because if you felt like you were worthy, if you had confidence, if you had a high self-esteem, once again, you might leave, and you would also reflect back to them just how shame-ridden they actually are. They need to destroy every semblance of self-worth you have. Number 5 symptom is people-pleasing. You have been conditioned to feel that it's selfish to have any needs of your own. You have to put other people first at all times. You certainly have to put the narcissist first. So you feel guilty if you don't say yes when someone wants something from you. That guilt is just too much to bear. It feels so much easier just to say yes, rather than think that people don't like you because your abuser made sure that you having any needs, which someone we love should be encouraging us to do, encouraging us to engage in our self-care and to feel like we can have boundaries. The narcissist made sure that any attempt you ever made to have boundaries or to do something for yourself, they made sure that this was viewed by you, not to mention everyone else, as an extremely selfish gesture, and that you were doing those things for yourself at the expense of everybody else. So people pleasing, which makes you feel drained because you never are allowed to focus on yourself. People pleasing becomes a classic trait of abuse victims because of that conditioning from an abuser that never wanted you to feel good about yourself and felt so angry and envious if you did do something for yourself. Number 6 symptom is lack of self-trust. How can you trust your decision-making ability when you have been told over and over again by someone who claims they love you, and they say it with such conviction, with such adamance that you are wrong, even in the face of black and white evidence? How can you trust yourself when you have been told by this person that you are wrong every single time? It gets to the stage where you assume that you're wrong and you fear making a decision, and you go to your abuser for what your reality is, for what is right and what is wrong. And that is exactly what they want. That is what they condition you to do. In other words, they teach you to not trust your instincts. So it feels very, very wrong to have this little niggling voice, and you end up just assuming that niggling voice is wrong, and you go with the opposite to that, which no doubt is what your abuser would have told you was the right thing to do. So lack of self-trust is so textbook, and it's something that you are going to have to practice when you come out of the abusive relationship. And that is going with your instincts every single time. Number 7 symptom is anxiety. I don't think I have spoken to one single client, and I have spoken to thousands of narcissistic abuse victims over the years. By the way, guys, if you would like to have a one-on-one counseling session with me via Zoom, no matter where you are in the world, please just see my website link in the description. I'd love to be able to support you individually. But I don't think I've spoken to one single person who hasn't had some degree, if not an immense amount of anxiety. Anxiety comes about when we fear or we feel a lack of control in our life. How much control did you have when you were in the relationship with the narcissist? Well, most probably absolutely zero. And you were in a hypervigilant state all the time, walking on eggshells. And as a result of those chemicals that were forever pulsating through your body, such as the cortisol and the adrenaline on overdrive, and the fear of attack, your body was in a constant state nearly of anxiety. You were anxious because you had no control. You could not predict the consequences of your behavior. 1 minute it would be good, the next minute the same thing would be bad. And so that anxiety, that fear that comes about because you cannot control your life. You are powerless. So you suffer these physical symptoms and this immense degree of distress because of that lack of control. And it is just a classic symptom of narcissistic abuse victims, NVS, because you are walking on eggshells all the time and you cannot control your environment no matter what you do. You cannot predict what will be the right thing to do to please your abuser. Number 8 symptom of NVS is a loss of your sense of identity and your sense of self. Who are you? Who are you after this abusive relationship has ended? Who are you when you're in the abusive relationship? As I said earlier, the narcissist seeks to dismantle your personality and create a new one that is easy to control and to abuse. You can't even remember a lot of the time what you used to like and enjoy because you had to submit to the narcissist's idea of what was a good time or a good meal to have. And that was just easier. That was a survival technique that you came up with, and you had to drop all of your passions and take up holidays and all the likes and the dislikes of your abuser. And in doing so, you lose who you are. And that loss of yourself. That is something that you have to recover in your healing journey. You, with lots of support from your loved ones and a narcissistic abuse therapist, you need to find the person you were meant to be before you were abused. Number 9 symptom of NVS is feeling numb. You feel like you can't even express sadness at the betrayal. You don't have the energy to be angry. You feel nothing. The numbness is kind of like a way to protect you. Once again, your brain's way of protecting you from facing it, facing the absolute annihilation of your self-worth, of your identity, the annihilation of your trust. Being numb stops you from feeling the pain. And being numb means not feeling any emotion, whether that be sadness or anger or happiness. And that's a dangerous place to be. And whilst it can be horrible to feel the emotions that come along because of dealing with the trauma, processing it, dealing with the betrayal, that pain can be excruciating, but not feeling them can keep you in a place where you never again experience joy. And you cannot let your abuser take that away from you any longer. So if you are feeling this way, guys, please get support and from someone, once again, who's experienced in working with trauma victims, who will help you to feel and process those emotions. Number 10 symptom is confusion. You were gaslighted out of your reality for the entirety of this relationship. If you are in the vicinity of the narcissist, or they are communicating with you in any way, shape or form, they are in a state of confusing you, manipulating you, no matter what they are doing. And a confused mind is a conquered mind, and they want you to doubt yourself at all times. So confusion is an absolute textbook symptom of NVS, where you cannot take anything or anyone at face value, or you need to double check with someone else what is going on. At any rate, you are easily confused because, once again, the person who purported to love you so much said that you just didn't comprehend things very easily. In other words, they were gaslighting you. And that is a state that you were in constantly. Confusion and narcissistic abuse go hand in hand. Number 11 symptom is fear that any success will be sabotaged. Now, this relates back to an earlier symptom I spoke about in not experiencing the joy of looking forward to anything. This is very, very similar. Now, if you have been conditioned to believe, in other words, your brain has come to learn that any success you have is short-lived. You will know, many of you, that you did not come home and jump into the arms of the narcissist and say, oh, congratulate me. Well, maybe you did at the beginning, but you learned very quickly not to do that because it was minimized or it was ridiculed or it was just totally ignored. And it was something that you were made to feel guilty about because it reflected back to the narcissist their own inadequacies. So basically, any success or happiness you had when you were with the narcissist, you learned to not tell them about, or you downplayed it yourself because you knew that they would sabotage it and or make you feel like it was nothing. So it was better for you to not say anything at all. But this can also happen after the abusive relationship has ended, in that becomes an ingrained behavior because of that conditioning, in that you subconsciously fear success because success and disappointment go hand in hand. So you don't try in the first place. You don't apply for that new job or that university course or just something, that you've always wanted. You don't even think about beginning the process. You come up with any excuse in the world around why it's just not feasible or you're just not good enough. You got to be kidding if you think you can do that. That's your abuser inside your head. But it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy where you subconsciously fear trying for any level of success in your life, because for you, success and abuse, disappointment go hand in hand. Number 12, symptom of NVS is feelings of PTSD or CPTSD, or those acronyms standing for post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, many people who are victims of narcissistic abuse, which you're highly unlikely to, actually it's probably more like you've got zero chance of being diagnosed with, because it's not a formal diagnosis. It's something that you can take and look at as a label and therefore do your research, and it just gives you something to work with. And that's what any diagnosis is. It's a label so that we know how to treat someone. So it's a label that can really help you to identify symptoms and, of course, to identify the type of abuse that you've experienced. But it is not a formal diagnosis. You are more likely to be diagnosed, especially if you haven't had that light bulb moment and you are unaware of who and what you've been dealing with. You're more likely to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, which can result in those triggered responses, the anxiety, the panic attacks, the flashbacks, the dreams, all of those types of physical and psychological, emotional symptoms that result because something or a feeling has reminded you of your trauma and has resulted in that physical, psychological, or emotional response. The triggers become things that can often result in a panic attack to begin with, and then it often becomes the fear of having another panic attack. And this can result, in a cycle where that initial trigger can really impact on you moving on with your life. So yes, PTSD and complex post-traumatic stress disorder is actually, I believe, the more apt term to describe what victims go through, because this abuse is complex and ongoing. It's not your symptoms, your PTSD is not the result of an isolated incident, but rather the result of a complex, ongoing, consistent pattern of abusive behaviors. Number 13 symptom of NVS is shame. So many victims experience immense shame. The narcissist made you feel ashamed to be who you are because they didn't want you to love yourself. They wanted you to feel grateful that they accepted you. Shame victims experience around staying too long with their abuser or going back after they escaped. Shame because they know on a logical level just how toxic this person is, but they just can't stay away. Shame because perhaps they let their loved ones down. Shame because they weren't emotionally available for their children. Shame in so many ways, but shame that they allowed, or they think they allowed, the abuse to continue, and shame that somehow they deserved the abuse. Number 14 symptom is guilt. How often did you feel guilty in this abusive relationship, whether it was a narcissistic parent or a partner, a spouse, or someone you work with? You could never please them. It did not matter what you did. They would always shift the goalposts, and they conditioned you to feel like you had failed because you didn't listen to them or you didn't try hard enough, which resulted in feelings of guilt. You never felt like you had done a good enough job and that you had let them down in some capacity. And this guilt doesn't go away if you manage to get out of the relationship. It's once again a conditioned response that you'll need to work on because you did not do anything to feel guilty about, and that guilt lies squarely on the shoulders of your abuser. And number 15 symptom, the last one for this episode, is saying you're sorry all the time. Every time you think you may have interrupted someone, even though it was really evident that they were the one to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Or if you think that they're just looking at you funny, like you've been asked to do something at work, perhaps, and you think that their gaze that they're giving you means the same thing as it meant when your abuser looked at you after you completed a task. They're looking at you because you had done something wrong. So you're always apologizing for not doing enough, apologizing for doing too much, apologizing for not apologizing enough, saying you're sorry all the time, like you're anticipating that you will have done the wrong thing. That is a trauma response, and it is something that just about every victim does, because you were in a constant state of having to make up for some perceived indiscretion, something that you had done wrong, and the narcissist expected you to apologize. So this becomes an ingrained, compulsive behavior, if you will, to make people like you and to avoid the confrontation that may come if they really do think that you've done something wrong. You're always trying to avoid that. So you're constantly saying sorry by prefacing that they are going to find fault in anything and everything that you do. And that brings us to the end of another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. Don't forget, guys, that there are many different symptoms of NVS, and there's also many physical symptoms. And I did a podcast. You can find that online or wherever you get your podcasts. I did a podcast actually on the physical symptoms, such as, headaches and fibromyalgia, things like that victims suffer. But there are numerous other symptoms, behaviors, disorders that I could have spoken about. But it's when you put them all together and you see a pattern there, that's when you know that this is something, the envious is a thing, and it's something that you are going through. That doesn't mean there mightn't be other diagnoses at play, diagnoses that your mental health professional, your doctor may diagnose, but certainly that is something that can give you the tools to do your research and get the proper support. Don't forget also, if you'd like to have a one-on-one session with me on Zoom, no matter where you are, just see my website link in the description. And don't forget, guys, to get your copy of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, my best-selling book, available as well in Audible and Kindle. And please, if you'd like to support the channel, the best thing you can do, guys, is to share it and leave a rating and a review, because that helps with the algorithm, and that certainly helps to let people know that it's out there. On that note, it's bye from me for now. Until tomorrow's episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.